today we're in stage 8, which is the stage of the orchestra, part 3. And we are going to be talking about the path towards zero conflict. How do we achieve zero conflict? And in this part, we will focus on the practical steps we can take in our lives to eliminate conflict from our body, mind, and emotions, all three. Now, before we dive into zero conflict, I would like to do a quick recap of parts 1 and 2, just the key points that we have learned, because they all relate to creation of harmony and hence elimination of conflict. So we explored the 7 key symbols of the orchestra in parts 1 and 2, which are: number 1 is the stage or the platform on which the orchestra plays. And this stage is your foundation of knowledge. And this includes all the knowledge and light that you have derived throughout your journey. Next, we discuss the instruments of the orchestra. What do the instruments represent? They are your thoughts and emotions, which drive your words and actions, which in turn create events and experiences create knowledge and light. So these instruments are really essential features of our lives. Then we discuss the musicians playing the instruments. Who are the musicians? They are the elements of your character. And we covered examples of elements of character such as kindness and cruelty with contrasts, generosity and being miserly, consideration and neglect, confidence and fear, and more. And we went through quite a bit of detail into elements of character. Then the next we discuss the audience in the theater. What makes up the audience? Who are they? So your audience includes every being you have ever encountered, from those closest to you down to simple acquaintances, and even those you may have only encountered once. Therefore, every encounter in your material journey is of significant value and not to be ignored, because they are the audience. And we also learned about practicing detachment, healthy detachment. And this is an essential part of overcoming conflicts in our lives, and we will go into more of that in the next part 4. Today we'll do part 3, which is zero conflict. I couldn't fit it all in one. So the next masterclass will be part 2, and that's where we'll wrap up stage 8. Next, we covered the script that the musicians play to. What is the script? What does it comprise? The script of the music includes your ethics and values. It includes the guidance of the scriptures and teachings that you have derived from enlightened beings that you have encountered in your life. The script also includes the wisdom you as a soul have derived from stages 1 to 7. So it's your script. And finally, it includes inspirations that are derived from the conductor of your orchestra. Every element of the script is based on helping you create the music of pure and absolute harmony, the music of zero conflict. Next, we discuss the music itself in much detail, great detail. What is the music? The music is the power of pure harmony. It is a power that manifests to its fullest extent when zero conflict is reached, when our being is free of all conflict. Now, what does this power do? It helps break down the separating barrier that separates the river from its source, which is the ocean, as it seeks to merge into the ocean. As you remember, for a certain distance, it's neither the river nor the ocean. The water is sweet and the ocean is salty. And it's this separating barrier that zero conflict, that power of pure harmony breaks down, allowing the soul to complete its journey and merge and achieve union with its creator, which is then going into stage 9, which will be our subsequent masterclass. And finally, we covered the conductor. The conductor of the orchestra leads and directs the musicians to play their music according to the script. The conductor knows exactly what is required to enable the orchestra to play that music of pure harmony. The conductor has full knowledge of what needs to be done in your journey. So who is the conductor? The conductor is your higher self, your soul. Your soul knows exactly what it seeks to achieve. Hence, your soul guides the entire orchestra through inspiration. And I do strongly recommend that you review the videos of stage 8, parts 1 and 2, because we've covered these points in a lot of detail, and there's a lot of practical insights in them, a lot of knowledge in them, which will help you understand better the path towards zero conflict, which is one of the key themes of today, the path towards zero conflict. Now let us start by asking the question, what is conflict? So let's look at what the published literature says. It says that conflict is an extended struggle, a fight, a battle, a clashing or sharp disagreements as between ideas, interests, or purposes. So it's a clash. It's a mental struggle resulting from the needs, drives, and wishes or demands that are in opposition or are not compatible. And there are 4 types of conflicts. Conflicts with the self, conflicts with others, conflicts with the environment, which is our whole world and what happens in it, and conflict with the supernatural, which is the religious, spiritual dimension. Now, in 1999, I gave a lecture in South Africa on the 10 stages of the soul. And it was one of the earliest lectures on this subject. And after this lecture, many people came forward and said, how does one approach the path of zero conflict? And hence I wrote the book, Towards Zero Conflict, which we hope to update this year and reprint and relaunch, inshallah. And I think you will enjoy it very much. So today I'm going to delve into some of the key messages from this book as they relate to the journey at stage 8. Now, this is what I'm going to share with you, covers stages 1 to 8, the role of conflict, but then will zero into stage 8. What do we need to do? Because it's the process where we are at the river and it seeks to merge with the ocean. And so, which in essence represents union of the soul with its creator. We're going to look at how we help our soul by eliminating conflict in our lives. So this part and the next one are going to very much delve into practical ways that we can approach this whole endeavor of going onto the path of zero conflict. So it is also important for us to note and recognize that conflict can impact or disrupt our entire orchestra. This is why it's essential for us to work conscientiously towards eliminating conflict from all dimensions of our lives, from our body, our mind, and our emotions. So let's start with the body. Let us examine conflict at the level of the body, because we don't think of conflict at the level of the body, but it has a huge impact. Our body is our vehicle through which we experience life in this material world. It helps us fulfill the purpose for which we have come into this world. Without a healthy and functioning body, we can achieve nothing. Our body also presents us with physical limitations within which we have to journey through life. So it creates boundaries because its ability to withstand the challenging physical conditions of this world is limited. So we have to live and experience within the confines of the limits of this body. Remember, we are the limitless soul. Now we are in a limited body. Lot to learn from that. Because that's where meditation comes in. That's where, as we meditate, we go beyond the body. We go back towards the limitless. But while we are here experiencing this journey, it's limited. And you have to know limitless. You have to be limited in order to seek the limitless. So that's the role of our body there as well, from a spiritual perspective. So, but when we talk of the limitations of the body, I mean, you cannot survive without food, air, or water. And these are some of the basic limitations of the body, as are extreme heat, cold, or other physical conditions. So while our mind may want us to brave the peak of the Everest without a shirt, our body will not allow it. So it's creating confines for us. I'm giving you the light-hearted versions, but you can imagine the value those limits bring in our motivation to rise higher and break beyond. So now, from a point of view of conflict, what are some of the conflicts that can arise at the level of the body? The first one, I think, is absence of good health. And this creates pain, suffering, and inner conflict, which is expressed through frustration and anger, for example, or sadness and depression. Therefore, maintaining good health is key to overcoming conflict at the level of the body. And all we know, and we all know what we have to do to achieve, good health, but we are not always disciplined about it. Now let's look further. What does all this mean? Because we tend to indulge and overindulge in practices that damage our health. For example, poor diet, lack of exercise, most of us are guilty of that, abuse of intoxicants, drugs, alcohol, unhealthy living with absence of hygiene, unhealthy sexual practices, participating in dangerous activities where seriously bodily damage can occur, and more. So these are all the challenges we put forth to our body that create conflict. Therefore, whatever makes the body unhealthy is a source of conflict. Remember, whatever makes the body unhealthy is a source of conflict at the physical level. And no matter how benign it may seem, like, for example, consuming excessive sugary or carb-rich drinks like sodas and beers, it's benign, right? It doesn't do anything. We say we will burn off the sugars and the carbs later. Not quite so. This simple act is a seed that you plant in your being that will impact your health down the road, and it will create conflicts that you may not be able to easily trace back to it because its roots are deep. This simple act, repeated frequently, triggers illnesses which get severe over time. This affects our mood and state of mind, leaving us angry and frustrated, for example. Our poor health affects our loved ones who have to care for us. Hence, we restrict their freedom. So you can see how the circle of conflict begins to grow. Our neglect is, in fact, the first seed of it all, the first ripple. When you throw a pebble in the water, you get the first ripple, and then it spreads to infinity. It's that first ripple. Those are our acts of neglect. That's how we plant seeds. And what follows is circumstances that take us into a spiral of bigger circles, bigger conflicts, where we get mentally and emotionally hurt and challenged. We blame others, damage our relationships, and more. So beware of the little things. Rein them in, and you will prevent a lot of conflict down the road. So remember, conflict has seeds which appear harmless at the outset, but once they germinate, they form deep and strong hidden roots. Key is hidden roots. So we should all examine our practices, our way of living, and seek out the seeds of conflict, and then get rid of them. It is not difficult to do if we are mindful of them. Most of the times we're not mindful of them. So today we have a reminder before us. Let's be mindful. Next, after the body, is the mind and emotions. Now, the mind and emotions are also an integral part of the body, so you can't really separate them, and thus they have to be considered holistically. The body, mind, and emotions are tightly intertwined. To start with, a healthy body, if you have a healthy body, you will automatically take important steps to foster a healthy mind and emotions. A healthy body fosters a healthy mind and healthy emotions. When we did the masterclass on healing and alignment last year, and we did a number of classes, we talked about the 6 fields of the body that must be aligned in harmony in order to sustain its health and well-being. And these 6 fields integrate the body, the mind, the emotions, and connect us to our soul, our higher self, the conductor of the orchestra. And we discussed in this series the light field, which is above us. It goes into infinity, which is the flow of life force, which is the spiritual apex of our body that connects to the center of our forehead. Then we covered the sensory field, which covers our 5 senses, and plus the mind, 6 senses in this area. We covered the respiratory field, which is from the base of our chin to the top of our neck. This is the respiratory field, which governs the flow of all gases in our body, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. It keeps our body completely nourished and from a respiration point of view. Then we covered the field of flow, which is in the center of our chest, where our heart is located, and this governs the flow of all bodily fluids throughout the body, from arteries, veins, lymphatic system, everything. Then was a very important cleansing field, which is from the center of our chest down to the apex of our genital area. And the cleansing field basically has all our cleansing organs. And this is how we maintain our body in a toxin-free form through our cleansing organs. And this is where we do a lot of damage as well, because thoughts, emotions, strong emotions hammer this area in a very big way. Then we covered the earth field that grounds the body with the earth and its forces. So all these 6 fields need to be aligned in harmony for our well-being at all 3 levels: physical, mental, and emotional. And it happens as we align ourselves with our spiritual being. So now may be a good time to review the videos that we have on our website and on my YouTube channel on healing and alignment. We covered a lot of ground there, which will be very helpful in our journey towards zero conflict, because now, after you have learned about stage 8, and we're going to learn more about conflict, you'll see how that alignment plays a crucial role in bringing down conflict in our lives. And I've shared the techniques with you. So suffice to say that harmony and absence of conflict are keys for us to maintain good physical, mental, and emotional health, which are prerequisites for spiritual progress and well-being. Conflict within the self and the environment also stem directly from the state of our body, mind, and emotions. So the conflict within the self and the environment also stem from here. So we are identifying the roots. So let's get our bodies healthy and aligned and bring down the conflicts arising from poor physical, mental, and emotional health. This should be a key goal of ours. And there's a lot of knowledge available on this subject today online and everywhere. So take the time to research ways of healthy living that suit you, and then adopt them and practice them. And they don't have to make your life boring or worse. They will actually enhance your life. So find things that work for you. And I'm sure there's lots out there. So in conclusion, I would recommend practicing your alignment of the 6 fields every day. And this will help bring down the conflict within yourself significantly, because this alignment puts you in a state of peace and harmony at the levels of the body, mind, emotions, and soul. So it's a key tool that I urge you to practice. A few minutes each day can be extremely beneficial. And remember, at stage 8, every little tool you can use is worth its weight in gold. It's true at any stage, from 1 to 8, all the way. Now let us look at conflict from some other deeper angles. So my dear friends, we all tend to project our conflicts over others. We project our conflicts on everybody. We don't know it, But these become defining forces and defining parameters of our relationships. And the happiness and well-being that we can derive from our relationships, it's the conflicts we project or the lack of conflict. It defines our relationships. Conflict within the self and with others is a source of great physical, mental, and emotional damage. And they can hamper our spiritual progress significantly. So let us consider some of the keys we need to develop in order to open the door to the path towards zero conflict. Let's learn some of these keys. Today and in the next class, we'll be talking about the keys. So in my book, Towards Zero Conflict, I've covered a number of such keys and presented each one in the form of a story, because stories are easy to take in, they're very personal. So while you're reading one of the stories and it invokes certain emotions in you, you know that that particular conflict resides hidden within you, and only you know it. But once you recognize it, you're able to do something about it and overcome it through seeds of resolution, which we are also going to cover today. Now, if you ask someone what their hidden conflicts are, they will say they have none. And they will genuinely believe that. And so they are not lying. They just don't know that they harbor so many hidden conflicts. None of us knows this, but we do. Most of us don't even know that we harbor conflicts within ourselves deep down, which then manifested as conflicts in our relationships and in many other areas of our lives. These are all unknown to us. Usually we blame the other person and are happy to take the easier path of moving on. And we say, okay, chapter closed, that was a bad person, now I'm fine. But remember, a conflict has two sides, always, your side and the other person's side. And wherever there are flames of conflict, we have to accept that we have played an equal part in lighting that fire and fueling the flames further. So we are very much part of the conflict that we are experiencing. We are its source. So we have to ask ourselves, why does conflict come in our lives at every step? I mean, none of us is exempt from conflict. And I would say that conflict does not come to us as a punishment. On the contrary, it brings opportunities to refine ourselves and grow spiritually in the process. Most scriptures say that those who persevere with patience the conflicts of this world are granted passage to the light of the Creator. Those who persevere with patience the conflicts of this world are granted passage to the light of the Creator. What does that mean? The Creator is absolute harmony, love, and perfection. And to become one with His light requires perfection of the being and soul. And the experience and learning from conflict is like our pencil sharpener. When you draw a sketch with a blunt pencil, you capture less detail than when you draw with a sharpened one. Even though the sharpening process painfully shaves off parts of the pencil each time, but we need to sharpen ourselves. So at stage 8, we really need to achieve that ability, achieve the keys to be able to break past and allow our soul, the river, to merge into the ocean by achieving absolute harmony. So let's learn some of the keys now. The first key is recognizing that conflict is a state of mind. Conflict is a state of mind. And here I'm including conflict within the physical self, the mind, and the emotions. Now, in Towards Zero Conflict, I start the first chapter by sharing the story of Peter and Abdul, two best friends who are hiking together up Mount Teide in Tenerife, in Spain. So Peter comes from a devout Christian background, and Abdul from a Muslim one. But their diverse backgrounds have never been a source of conflict in their relationship. They are very close, these two boys, from childhood. And along the hike, the two boys discussed how the world has become such a dangerous place because of ever spiraling conflicts. And what triggered this conversation was at the time the Oklahoma City bombing had just taken place. And Peter says to Abdul that as soon as he heard of the blast and listened to the first news commentary, he was very disappointed because they were placing the blame straight on Abdul's faith. And he said he knew Abdul, he knew his family, he knew their values of peace. So he was actually distraught by how quickly this thing, the blame was beginning to escalate on a group of people following a certain faith. And this is what Peter says to Abdul. And he says, I immediately rejected the insinuations that were spreading on TV. Then it turned out, as we all know, to be the work of a mentally unwell Timothy McVeigh, whose actions could not be condoned by any faith or belief structure in this world, none. So the two friends talk about conflict as being a state of mind while they're looking at what the TV commentators and how it began to spiral. And they recognize that it is a state of mind. And as soon as something goes wrong, the conflict awakens because it's a state of mind. And it results in finger pointing and blame, like what came from the newscasters, anger and revenge, and lots more. It comes from that state of mind. When conflict resides hidden, buried deep down in one's mind, it makes a person very fragile and vulnerable to any form of disruption or aggression, however small it may be. So as a starting point, we have to ask ourselves, in all honesty, does conflict reside deep within my mind or being? Does it? Ignore the immediate answer, which says no, because that is simply not true. So dig deeper and examine your reactions to the conflicts you have encountered. Now, I'll throw a couple of examples at you, but you can go much broader than what I'm going to share. But let's examine you need to examine your reactions to your conflicts within your family, your relationships with friends, what type of conflicts have you experienced there, your love or romantic life, your community, in the world. Pick an example of a conflict you have experienced and ask yourself, how did I feel? Did it trigger strong emotions in me? How did I react? Did I lash out or bottle it up in myself and let it build? Did I add fuel to the fire? Did I relish the idea of revenge? Did I want to teach someone a lesson? The answer to these questions, if you're honest with yourself, will show you some of the conflicts that you harbor in your mind and being. And you are best off accepting that they exist so that you can take the next step, which is to let them go. Once you acknowledge that they exist, you work towards identifying them, then you work towards letting them go. Remember, you, your soul, your higher self, has full control over your state of mind if you let that control happen. So just as conflict can arise and spread in you rapidly, you also have the power to extinguish it just as quickly. We have that power, all of us, because conflict is a state of mind. Hence, you have power over it. It remains dangerous only for as long as you don't recognize its presence. Once you do, you can consciously take steps to usher it out of your being. So here is the seed of resolution or affirmation I share in Towards Zero Conflict on this subject, because once you've identified a conflict, then you have to practice seeds of resolution, which are affirmations, to let it get out of your being, to build yourself. And so the seeds of resolution for conflict as a state of mind, the seed of resolution, if those who are not familiar, is a very powerful thought or thoughts that you plant within your being. And it anchors itself within your body, mind, and emotions with regular practice. And then it works with you. to overcome what you're seeking to overcome. And to get the most out of this exercise of practicing seeds of resolution, you have to sit back quietly in a state of peace and calmness and repeat the affirmation within your intellect, which is the highest level of your mind that borders your soul. So this affirmation goes to the level of your intellect as you repeat it. And that's the highest level of your mind and your soul. And hence you now have power over it because it is a state of mind. So what are the seeds of resolution for conflict as a state of mind? The words are: conflict is a state of mind. Conflict is a state of mind. I have power over it, and I choose to let it go and leave my being forever. I choose peace, harmony, and well-being always. So these are seeds of resolution for you to work with conflict as a state of mind as you identify your hidden conflicts. Conflict is a state of mind. I have power over it, and I choose to let it go and leave my being forever. I choose peace, harmony, and well-being always. As you repeat these words gently and slowly, and I will get this video out as soon as I can so you can practice them. These are very powerful words, and they are your seeds of resolution that you have planted in your intellect, the most enlightened level of the mind. So they're no ordinary words. And once you internalize these words through regular practice, you will be amazed how they resurface like light bulbs in your mind. Every time you're about to react to conflict, you're going to be awakened to this affirmation. And so working with conflict as a state of mind is an important key that opens the door towards zero conflict, because as soon as you recognize that, you will refrain from that situation of conflict. You will not engage with it, and hence you have extinguished or not given conflicts a chance to be born. This is a very important key towards zero conflict. The next key is recognizing essence and form. Recognizing essence and form. And when we recognize essence and form, it shows us that there is no such thing as a bad person. Now, how do we recognize this? Every creation in this world has an essence and a form. The essence is pure and unblemished, for it emanates from the purest of sources, the higher self, the creator. So essence is pure and unblemished, and each one of us embodies essence. And in Towards Zero Conflict, I share the story of Emil, a world-renowned artist who produces the finest of paintings of landscapes, creatures, the skies, everything that Mother Nature reveals to us through her beauty. And he captures the most amazing paintings of these landscapes and creation. The problem is that the more perfect his work gets, his art gets, the greater the void he sees in them. Something is clearly missing, and he cannot put his finger on it, even though the whole world is praising his works. But something is missing. Then one day, he's away at his log cabin in the forest, looking at the trees, the lake, the natural surroundings, very engrossed in them. And he says, I will capture this incredible scene in my painting today. He's so taken in by them. Just then, and this is early hours of the morning, just then, a beautiful white dove appears on his window ledge. It's daybreak, appears on his window ledge. And it says to him, Emil, you are the world's greatest artist, but you don't know how to see. You look at everything, but see nothing. And Emil is amazed with this talking bird, and obviously it's of a much higher nature, and he, the artist, recognizes that. But this bird is telling him, you don't know how to see. So Emil says, if you're such a smart bird, why don't you tell me how to see? Because I've put out some of the best works of art. And the bird says, but you feel that void, don't you? He said, yes, I do. So teach me to see. And the bird says that when you look at a tree, the light of the tree, the image of the tree comes to you. You capture it coming to you, and then you simply copy it. Even robots can do that. But if you really want to capture the tree, and once you have looked at it, you close your eyes, visualize the tree from within yourself, create the tree, give it life, and bring it out from you and project it towards the tree you are looking at. And where your projection of your creation of that tree meets the image of the tree that is coming to you, where the two meet, capture that painting. And that painting will have essence because you have looked at it coming and you have seen from within. And when you capture the two, you will produce paintings with essence like you have never known before. And Emil thinks, wow, you are so right. It's the essence that's missing. I am only capturing the form. So he says to the bird, having learned, he said, having learned such an important lesson, he said, I'm 50 years old. Why did you not come to me sooner and teach me how to see? And the dove says, I have come to you many times. And even though you have looked at me, you did not see me. Then to help you, I've also come to your window many times in the early hours of the morning, but you were always asleep, and hence you never saw me, because you were not present to realize me. You were not present to realize me. But it is never too late, the bird says. Capture the essence of everything you paint by creating it from within you and projecting it outwards. And you will bless the world with art that is absolutely unprecedented. So, my dear friends, when we recognize that every person has an essence and a form, we begin to realize that there can be no such thing as a bad person. What we see is their form, and what we react to is the words and actions of their material mind. That's what we see, and that's what we react to. These are temporary, and they will perish one day. So why would we react so strongly to something that is so fickle and perishable? And despite knowing this, we tend to judge people harshly based on their temporal form and mind, and quickly label them as bad persons. Therein lies another deep root of our endless conflicts. Remind yourself that every being has an essence that is pure and divine and perfect in nature. Every being has an essence that is pure and divine and perfect in nature. And then there is the form in which we see imperfections, wrongdoing, and more. And we allow the form to engross us, thus fueling our inner and outer conflicts. And each one of us can cast our mind around and point at so many people we will call bad. But today, having learned about essence and form, let us accept that there is no such thing as a bad person. If we choose to focus on the form, if we choose to, on the essence, if we choose to focus on the form, we're always going to be embroiled in conflict. And our goal here at stage 8 is to get rid of this conflict. So let's not get engrossed with what is perishable, fickle, and temporary. And let's engage with what is permanent, that will carry us as souls higher. So what is the seed of resolution of essence and form? You sit back in silence, peace, and calmness, and reflect on your own essence. Contemplate that your essence is part of everything in this world. And that is indeed your true place in the world. That is your true place in the world, your essence. Your true place in this world is not your form. for it will perish one day. As I said, it is fickle and helpless compared to your timeless essence. So the seed of resolution for essence in form, and it's a very powerful seed and just one statement. I am everything, and everything is me. I am everything, and everything is me. As you repeat that, these words, once deeply seated in your intellect, will bring a special inner love that emanates from within you and flows out towards your friends, loved ones, and all of nature. I am everything, and everything is me. You will find yourself falling in love with everything because that is your essence expressing itself. You will also find yourself not judging people harshly anymore or saying unkind things about them, which is indeed a major source of conflict in this world. And we all know that because you choose to respect the essence rather than focus on and chastise the form. So this is an important key that opens the door towards zero conflict. And even in my first book, in Reflections from the Origin, I had a similar affirmation, slightly different. It was more towards a spiritual angle, which is, I am you, you are me, and together we are everything. So that's a slightly longer affirmation, but takes you to the same place. I am you, you are me, and together we are everything. So that's key number 2. You can choose whichever of the 2 affirmations you like, the short one, or the longer one. Let's go to the next key. And let's now look at, since we've talked about judgmentalism, another really important key is overcoming judgmentalism, because judgmentalism is a source of a huge amount of pain and suffering and misery and conflict in our world. And even in our vocabulary, we frequently pass judgment and don't realize that we have just dropped a grenade on somebody's life, if not directly, when he or she finally encounters it. So we have a lot of destructive power in us that comes from our judgmentalism. A lot of us do it unknowingly. So today it's time to know about it and to let it out of our beings. I mean, in Towards Zero Conflict, I shared a real life experience of mine. It's lighthearted, but the point is important. When we lived in Reno, in the States, we were having lunch, and I've shared this example with some of you before. We were having lunch, a few friends of mine, laughing, joking, and then this young guy who was very good looking, blonde guy, walks in, who's also one of our friends. And of course, he is an eligible bachelor and all the women were after him. And so some of the guys at the table were going, I don't know how you do it, man. This guy just always ends up with beautiful women. So one of the guys, once he got to the table, decided to joke with him. And he said, when did you stop beating your wife? And this guy laughed and he goes, I'm not married. He said, no, tell us, when did you stop beating your wife? I'm sure you have one hidden everywhere. And so everybody laughed. And of course, he laughed, but the thought in everybody's mind was, he beats women. From a joke, somehow that thought sunk. And from something so lighthearted, and supposedly it was meant to be funny, we ended up acquiring a deep-rooted judgment of this fine young man. He beats women. So we all ended up subconsciously judging him with no basis at all. And what is very interesting is that benign conversation came back weeks later from people in town. He beats women. And this poor guy was the nicest guy you could encounter. That's judgmentalism. That's judgmentalism. And you have all known in your own lives of more destructive forms of judgmentalism. I'm just giving you a lighthearted version, which I experienced. And I said to myself, how powerful was that thought, which was meant to be funny? It sank. And even in my mind, for a few moments, when I look at him, he beats women. No. So judgmentalism is like a cancer. Have to uproot it and then not let it back in. What are the seeds of resolution for judgmentalism? The seeds are: a person is like a piece of paper whose truth is written on one side and the other side is blank. A person is like a piece of paper whose truth is written on one side and the other side is blank. The side I see is always the blank one. Therefore, I will refrain from judging anyone. The side I see is always the blank one. Therefore, I will refrain from judging anyone. Now, these are very beautiful seeds of resolution. And once these seeds, once deeply rooted in the intellect, they come alive. Each time you're about to judge someone, you will see that blank piece of paper come before you, and you will refrain from passing your judgment. You will actually see the paper coming. And so many people who practiced it have said that to me as well. They're about to say something unknowingly, and boom, they see that paper and go, I should not do this. And at that moment, you have probably prevented a serious conflict that could have engulfed you and others, bringing nothing but heartache and misery. So this is another key to the door towards zero conflict. Never. Let's root judgmentalism out of us. And if we look at the previous key, essence and form, when you respect and honor essence, you're not going to judge, because you're already at that level where you are beyond the smallness of this little mind of ours, this dangerous little mind of ours. Then, and again, dangerous little mind also has the state of mind, and from intellect, you can change whatever you want. So these three keys are synchronized with each other. As you practice and understand them, they'll all come together as one. The next key that I'd like to share with you, and this is the last key for today, is going with the flow. And I have a number of other keys for the next class, but going with the flow. Now, we've all heard this phrase, and it sounds cliche, but there's a lot more to it. It's not cliche. Let us examine for a moment the concept of rigidity versus flexibility. Here's an example of rigidity. From my boarding school days in the UK in the early 1970s, I lived in a boarding house in Bedford, which followed very strict standards of discipline. Those days were different. They were hard times. And we had a matron, a lady in her 50s. She was the epitome of rigidity. Everything had to be done a certain way. And you would get into a lot of trouble if you did not comply. She was very, very rigid. You couldn't move her. And I can't ever remember seeing her happy. Just not even one day in the 2 years that I was in the boarding house. She was always angry, frustrated, sad, or in tears every single day. And I believe her rigidity had a lot to do with it. She hated change or disorder of any type. How can you survive with rigidity in a world of constant change and chaos? How? It will frustrate you to death. That was matron, a very sour woman of her own making. And God bless her wherever she is, and I hope she managed to overcome it. I hope she learned about towards zero conflict from some other source and found happiness. Then, many years later, after completing my engineering degree, I moved to Canada. And I used to work downtown Toronto, the center of the city. And one day as I was walking towards my office, I stopped to watch people working at a construction site. Now, these people were erecting a tall pillar, which was absolutely rigid, but very tall. And they did it by tying 4 flexible cables, which they manipulated till the pillar was perfectly in place. So with these cables, they kept manipulating it until it was perfectly in place. It took the flexibility of the cables to erect something as rigid as the pillar. You may have seen this scene so many times, but now ask yourself, What made that rigid structure fall in place? It was the flexibility of the cables right before our eyes. Therefore, when surrounded by rigidity, bring forward subtle flexibility. Be like the cable and not the pillar, because the pillar is the weaker one. It'll fall down, and it falls down, it's going to shatter. So avoid head-on clashes with rigidity and rigid people and rigid ways. The only outcomes that come from a clash are conflict and pain. And something will shatter for sure. So be the cable, and you can work with rigid people with harmony. And as you master this, you stop encountering rigidity. Because you, the pupil, have learned, and then you will find less encounters of rigidity, and you'll move on to a different lesson of learning in life. And I mean, if we want to see the best example of flexibility, look at water. It is the most flexible element on the planet. And look at a glass filled with water. Pure flexibility, surrounded by absolute rigidity. Glass, rigid, water, flexible. If the rigid glass falls, what happens? It shatters into many fragments everywhere. And in that same situation, the water simply flows out of the crisis, unaffected. Look at the difference. And if we can think and live like water, we can eliminate a lot of conflict and pain from our lives and from the lives of others. So whenever in doubt, ask yourself, what would water do? And be and live like water, be and live like the river. And I've shared this with you before. Go with the flow, and you will free yourself and others from much conflict. So yes, go with the flow. It is not a cliche. It's actually a mantra. And as you think of yourself as the river, so many messages will come to you. For example, you will quickly realize that a river can never flow uphill. So don't allow yourself to be embroiled in conflict in situations that you identify as demanding an uphill flow. Don't get embroiled in that. If you see it's uphill flow, pause, strategize, approach it differently, like the river does, like water does. So Karima and I saw a great example of uphill flow on a Swissair flight in Johannesburg. It was around the same time as I was writing this book. And we were at Johannesburg airport, and the plane was not at the terminal, so we had to take a bus, and we got on it. And then they were trying to fit the catering ramp into the plane. But the ramp was a bit too high, and it could not engage into the aircraft door. So the technicians tried to fix the problem for an hour while we waited patiently. Then they asked us all to disembark, saying that if you disembark, and this is what one of the ladies or the air hostess were with us, she said, if we disembark, the weight of the plane goes down, it rises, and everything connects. It didn't work. As we stood on the tarmac, I said to Karima, why don't they remove some of the air from the truck tires? And it will all work out. Simple. But then who am I? I'm just a passenger. After 20 minutes delay, that's exactly what happened. One of the flight engineers, who was not part of the ground crew, got them to do just that, deflate the tires of the truck, and the ramp lodged in correctly. Everything was fine, and we were on our way. So my dear friends, battling that ground team was battling, and they were trying to flow uphill, causing frustration and chaos and affecting so many of us because they were trying to flow uphill. The flight engineer who figured it out was like the river, and he was not going to flow uphill. So he found a solution where that was not necessary. So solutions exist where flowing uphill is not necessary, and then you choose that. So yes, let us be like the river, like water, and go with the flow. Now, the seeds of resolution for flow are, I am water, I am the river, I am flexible, I am free, I flow in peace with all that life brings my way. I am water. I am the river. I am flexible. I am free. I flow in peace with all that life brings my way. Beautiful seed of resolution. It actually makes you feel free from within as you internalize it in your intellect. And you start going with the flow, and then you start making decisions differently. You start reacting differently. You know, there's work hard and work smart. You start working smarter. Lower conflict. That's the path. So here's one more key to the door of zero conflict. And I believe we can stop here today. And in the next class of stage 8, we can cover a few more keys to the doors that opens and leads us on the path of zero conflict. So with that, I'd like to wrap up today. We are at 6:57. Perfect. I was saying to Karima, I'd like to finish within an hour. So thank God it worked out. Time worked with us. So you've got a lot of food for thought today. And I've shared 4 important keys with you. So please, when you go home today, start thinking about them. I'll get the video out to you. And I pray that you have much success on your path towards zero conflict, that success on that path brings you a lot of peace, a lot of happiness, and a lot of spiritual growth. And I pray that the light of our Creator may always be with you to help you, guide you, protect you, and love you always. Take care and stay blessed, and we look forward to seeing you again in a week's time.